A girl washed the dishes in tears, hiding her fear behind her injured hands. In the living room, her stepmother watched impassively, turning the house into a place of silence and pain. But the unexpected happens when her millionaire father returns home early. Upon opening the door, he is confronted with a scene that would forever change the family's destiny. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. Robert Sullivan gazed at the framed photograph on his mahogany desk, his fingers tracing the outline of his late wife's smile. Outside his office window, the Boston skyline glittered with promise, much like their life had once been. At 42, Robert had built Sullivan Enterprises into one of Massachusetts's most respected development firms, but since Jennifer's passing 18 months ago, success tasted hollow. "Daddy?" 8-year-old Emma stood in the doorway, her blonde hair so like her mother's caught in the late afternoon sunlight. "Mrs. Wilson says dinner's ready." Robert smiled, sliding the photo face down. "Coming, sweetheart." He'd promised himself to stop living in memories for Emma's sake. Their housekeeper, Mrs. Wilson, had been a godsend during the worst days, but even she couldn't fill the void Emma clearly felt without a mother. That evening, as Robert tucked Emma into bed beneath her Constellation ceiling projector, she asked the question that had become ritual. "Do you think Mommy can see us from the stars?" Robert swallowed hard. "I'm sure she's watching over us always." He kissed her forehead. "But Emma, you know it's just us now, and we need to keep moving forward, right?" Emma nodded solemnly, her small fingers clutching her stuffed rabbit, Jennifer's last gift to her. "I know, Daddy. Mrs. Wilson says time heals." "Mrs. Wilson is very wise," Robert said, though he wondered if either of them truly believed it. The following week, Robert's business partner, Mike Lawson, insisted he attend a charity gala. "You can't keep hiding in that office and that empty house," Mike argued over lunch at their usual downtown bistro. "Jennifer wouldn't have wanted that." "I'm not hiding," Robert protested weakly. "I'm focused on Emma. And Emma needs to see her father living, not just existing." Mike slid an invitation across the table. "The Children's Hospital Foundation Gala. Board members, potential investors, and," he paused meaningfully, "eligible women who aren't just after your money." Robert scowled, but took the invitation. The ballroom of the Fairmont Copley Plaza Hotel shimmered with crystal chandeliers and Boston's elite when Robert reluctantly arrived. He made obligatory conversation, checked his watch repeatedly, and was about to slip out when a woman in a midnight blue gown approached him. "You look like you're plotting an escape," she said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "I can't say I blame you." Robert turned to find himself facing striking green eyes and an elegant smile. "That obvious?" Only to a fellow escapee, she extended her hand. Catherine Winters. Something in her directness disarmed him. "Robert Sullivan. I know who you are, Mr. Sullivan. Your restoration of the North End waterfront properties was brilliant." She sipped her champagne. "I'm on the Historical Preservation Board." They talked for an hour about architecture, Boston politics, and eventually, inevitably, about families. "My son Tyler is 6, Catherine said, showing him a photo on her phone of a serious-looking boy with her same green eyes. "His father left when Tyler was 2, said parenthood wasn't for him." Her smile remained, but her eyes hardened momentarily. "Some men aren't built for responsibility." "I'm sorry," Robert said, surprised by his own candor as he added, "My wife passed away almost 2 years ago. It's been challenging." Catherine's expression softened. "I can't imagine. You have a daughter, don't you?" "Emma. She's 8. Robert found himself reaching for his wallet, showing Catherine the school photo he carried. "She has your eyes," Catherine observed, "but I imagine quite a bit of her mother in her as well." Robert nodded, unexpectedly touched by Catherine's perception. When she asked to see him again, he surprised himself by agreeing. Their courtship progressed with cautious deliberation. Catherine was everything Robert thought he needed: intelligent, poised, and seemingly understanding of his devotion to Emma. She never pushed, never demanded, yet somehow made him feel that life could be full again. When Robert finally introduced Catherine to Emma, 3 months after the gala, he held his breath. Emma was polite but reserved, studying Catherine with Jennifer's thoughtful gaze. "Your daddy tells me you love astronomy," Catherine said, presenting Emma with a book on constellations. "Tyler's into space too." Emma accepted the gift with a quiet, "Thank you," but later asked Robert, "Is she going to be here a lot now?" "Would that be okay?" Robert asked carefully. "I like Catherine. I think you might too if you give her a chance." Emma shrugged, turning to her homework. "I guess." The first dinner with both children present was at Catherine's elegant Beacon Hill townhouse. Tyler, small for his age, with a watchful demeanor, showed Emma his telescope while the adults prepared dinner. "They seem to be getting along," Catherine observed, her hand briefly touching Robert's as she passed him a serving dish. "Emma's always wanted a sibling," Robert said, watching the children through the kitchen doorway. "She gets lonely sometimes." "Tyler, too," Catherine's voice softened. "It's not easy being the only child in a single-parent home." As spring turned to summer, Catherine and Tyler became fixtures in the Sullivans' lives. Catherine suggested family outings, the aquarium, sailing on the Charles River, picnics in the public garden. To Robert's relief, Emma gradually warmed to these excursions, even laughing when Tyler taught her to skip stones across the pond. "She's coming around," Robert told Mrs. Wilson, who had been with the family since Emma was born. Mrs. Wilson, arranging flowers in the kitchen, paused. "Miss Emma is trying for your sake," she said carefully, "but children sense things adults sometimes miss." "What does that mean?" Robert asked, but Mrs. Wilson just shook her head and continued with the flowers. By late August, Robert found himself considering a future he hadn't thought possible. Over dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking Boston Harbor, he reached for Catherine's hand. "These past months have been unexpected," he said. "I never thought I'd feel this way again." Catherine's smile was radiant in the candlelight. "Neither did I." "I've been thinking," Robert continued, "about our situation. 2 single parents, 2 children who seem to get along. It makes sense to consolidate." Catherine tilted her head. "Are you proposing we move in together, Robert?" "I'm proposing more than that," he said, reaching into his pocket for the ring he'd chosen with far less certainty than the one he'd given Jennifer a decade earlier. "I'm proposing we become a family." Catherine's eyes widened, but before she could answer, Robert added quickly, "Not to replace what we've lost, but to build something new, for all of us." "Yes," Catherine whispered, extending her finger for the ring. "Yes, I think that's exactly what we all need." When Robert announced the engagement to Emma, he braced himself for resistance. Instead, Emma asked practical questions. Would they stay in their house? Would she have to change schools? Would Tyler share her bathroom? "We'll stay here," Robert assured her. "This is our home. Catherine and Tyler will move in with us." Emma nodded slowly. "Does this mean I have to call her Mom?" Robert knelt to her level. "No, sweetheart. Catherine isn't trying to replace your mother. You can call her whatever feels right." "Okay," Emma said, her expression unreadable. "Can I go finish my book now?" That night, Robert found Emma sitting on her window seat, staring at the stars. "Are you really okay with all this?" he asked, joining her. Emma was quiet for so long that Robert thought she might not answer. Finally, she said, "I want you to be happy, Daddy." "I want you to be happy too, Em." "I know." She leaned against him. "I just miss Mommy sometimes." Robert held her close. "Me too, kiddo. Me too." As Catherine and Tyler prepared to move in, Robert noticed subtle changes in Emma. She grew quieter, spent more time in her room. Mrs. Wilson mentioned that Emma had been having nightmares again. "Change is hard," Catherine reassured him when he expressed concern. "Once we're settled, she'll adjust. Children are resilient." The day Catherine and Tyler moved in was orchestrated with the same efficiency Catherine brought to everything. Movers arranged her elegant furniture alongside the Sullivans' more comfortable pieces. Catherine's decorator added touches that somehow made the house look more like a showcase and less like the home Jennifer had created. That evening, Catherine prepared a celebratory dinner, roast chicken with rosemary, Tyler's favorite. As they sat at the newly extended dining table, Catherine raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she said, her smile perfect, her eyes bright. Robert echoed the sentiment, not noticing how Emma's hands trembled around her water glass, nor how Tyler watched his mother with cautious eyes. Later, as Robert passed Emma's room, he heard her crying softly. He paused, then continued to the master bedroom where Catherine was arranging her things in what had once been Jennifer's closet. "Everything okay?" Catherine asked, hanging a silk blouse. "Yes," Robert said, pushing away his unease. "Everything's fine. The autumn leaves painted Boston in fiery hues as the newly formed family settled into a routine. On the surface, the Sullivan Winters household functioned with clockwork precision. Catherine managed the home with elegant efficiency. Tyler adjusted to his new school, and Robert threw himself into a major development project in Cambridge. Only Emma seemed out of step, growing increasingly withdrawn as the weeks passed. At the private academy both children now attended, Catherine charmed the teachers and PTA members with her impeccable manners and generous donations. She volunteered for committees, hosted fundraising events, and quickly became a fixture in the school community. "Your new wife is absolutely wonderful," Emma's teacher told Robert during a parent-teacher conference. "So involved, so dedicated to both children's education." Robert beamed with pride. "We're lucky to have her." The teacher hesitated. "Emma seems to be having some trouble adjusting, though. Her participation in class has decreased, and she's been turning in assignments late, which isn't like her." Robert frowned. "I hadn't noticed. I'll talk to her." That evening he found Emma at her desk, staring blankly at her math homework. "Ms. Patterson says you've been struggling in class," he said gently, sitting on the edge of her bed. "What's going on, Em?" Emma shrugged without looking up. "Nothing. I'm fine. You don't seem fine. You used to love school." "Things change," Emma mumbled, an expression far too old for her 8-year-old face. "Is it Catherine? Tyler, the new arrangement?" Robert pressed. "We're all still figuring this out, but we need to talk about problems when they come up." Emma finally looked at him, her blue eyes serious. "Catherine doesn't like me very much." The statement, delivered so matter-of-factly, stunned Robert. "What, of course she does. Why would you say that?" "She smiles different when you're not looking," Emma said simply. "And she makes rules just for me." Robert sighed, attributing Emma's words to the natural resistance to a step-parent. "Catherine is trying to be a good mother figure. Sometimes that means rules and structure. Give her a chance, okay?" Emma turned back to her homework without answering. Downstairs, Catherine was arranging flowers in the dining room, her movements precise and measured. "Everything all right?" she asked when Robert entered. "Emma's teacher says she's having some trouble at school." Robert poured himself a scotch from the bar cart. "Emma seems to think you don't like her." Catherine's hands stilled. "That's ridiculous. I've done nothing but try to make her feel welcome and loved. I know. Kids can be sensitive during transitions." Catherine set down the shears and approached him, placing a manicured hand on his arm. "Robert, I understand this is difficult. Emma misses her mother, and I'm the interloper. But we need to present a united front. Inconsistent parenting will only confuse her more." Robert nodded, grateful for Catherine's seeming wisdom. "You're right. What do you suggest?" "I think Emma needs more structure, more responsibility," Catherine said thoughtfully. "Children thrive when they have purpose. Perhaps some additional chores would help her feel more integrated into our new family dynamic." The suggestion seemed reasonable, and Robert agreed. The next day, Catherine presented Emma with a chore chart, setting the table, clearing dishes, keeping her room tidy. Simple tasks appropriate for her age. To Robert's relief, Emma didn't protest. If anything, she became more compliant, quieter. He interpreted this as acceptance, not noticing how she watched Catherine when she thought no one was looking. Mrs. Wilson, however, noticed everything. The longtime housekeeper observed with growing concern as Catherine subtly rearranged the household to her liking. "I've adjusted your schedule, Mrs. Wilson," Catherine informed her one morning. "We'll only need you 3 days a week now. I prefer to manage the household myself." Mrs. Wilson, who had been with the family since before Emma was born, looked startled. "Did Mr. Sullivan approve this change?" "My husband trusts my judgment in domestic matters," Catherine replied smoothly. "And frankly, Emma needs to learn some independence rather than relying on you for everything." That evening, Mrs. Wilson found Robert in his study. Mr. Sullivan, about my schedule. Catherine mentioned it, Robert said, not looking up from his laptop. Makes sense with her home more now. Is there a problem? Mrs. Wilson hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Sir, I'm concerned about Emma. She seems different lately. Robert finally looked up. Different how? Withdrawn, anxious. She's not eating well, and I've heard her crying in her room. Robert frowned. She's adjusting, Mrs. Wilson. We all are. Of course, sir, Mrs. Wilson paused. It's just that, well, Miss Emma told me that when you're not home, things are different. Different? Robert's tone sharpened. In what way? Mrs. Wilson shifted uncomfortably. She says Mrs. Sullivan has different rules when you're gone. Stricter ones. Robert sighed. Emma's been saying similar things to me. Look, I appreciate your concern, but Catherine is trying to establish her role as a parent. It's natural there would be some friction. Mrs. Wilson nodded stiffly. As you say, sir. She turned to leave, then added quietly, I've known that child her whole life. Mr. Sullivan, something isn't right. After she left, Robert sat troubled, wondering if he was missing something important. Before he could pursue the thought, Catherine appeared in the doorway, elegant in a silk blouse and tailored slacks. Dinner's ready, she announced. I've made Tyler's favorite, my grandmother's lasagna recipe. At the table, Robert observed the children carefully. Tyler, normally quiet, seemed especially subdued, barely looking up from his plate. Emma pushed her food around without eating much. Emma, eat your dinner, Catherine said, her tone pleasant but firm. We don't waste food in this house. I'm not hungry, Emma murmured. You haven't even tried it, Catherine insisted, her smile unchanged, but her eyes hardening slightly. Just 3 more bites at least. Emma dutifully took a small bite, then another. Robert noticed how she watched Catherine's face after each one, as if seeking approval. Good girl, Catherine said, turning her attention to Robert. How was your meeting with the Cambridge investors? As Robert described his day, he caught Emma and Tyler exchanging glances, a silent communication he couldn't decipher. Later, as he helped clear the table, he asked Tyler about school while Catherine was in the kitchen. It's okay, Tyler answered, his voice barely audible. Just okay? I thought you were excited about the science club. Tyler glanced toward the kitchen before answering. Mom says I need to focus on my regular studies first. Robert frowned. Catherine had been the one to suggest science club in the first place. That night, Robert awoke to the sound of soft crying. Following it to Emma's room, he found her curled up with her stuffed rabbit, tears streaming down her face. Em? What's wrong, sweetheart? He sat on the edge of her bed, stroking her hair. Bad dream, she mumbled, wiping her eyes. Want to talk about it? Emma shook her head. Can Mrs. Wilson come back tomorrow instead of Saturday? The question puzzled Robert. She'll be here Saturday as usual. Why? I miss her, Emma said, clutching her rabbit tighter. Catherine will be home with you tomorrow. You'll have fun together. Emma's expression clouded. She doesn't like me, Daddy, not really. That's not true. Catherine cares about you very much. Then why does she? Emma stopped abruptly as a shadow fell across the doorway. Catherine stood there in her silk robe, her expression concerned. Everything okay? I heard voices. Just a nightmare, Robert explained. She's fine now. Catherine approached the bed, sitting beside Robert. Poor thing. Would you like me to make you some warm milk? My mother always did that for me after bad dreams. Emma shrank back slightly. No, thank you. Catherine smiled, but Robert noticed it didn't reach her eyes. Well, try to get some sleep. Remember, you have that spelling test tomorrow. After tucking Emma back in, they returned to their bedroom. You're so good with her, Robert said, grateful for Catherine's patience. I'm trying, Catherine sighed, but I worry she'll never accept me. Give her time, Robert assured her, pulling her close. She'll come around. Over the next few weeks, Robert noticed small but troubling changes. Emma's once prized doll collection disappeared from her bedroom shelves. When he asked about it, Catherine explained that they were being stored, temporarily to make space, for more educational materials. Tyler's extensive Lego sets remained untouched. Emma's bright clothing was gradually replaced with more subdued outfits that Catherine deemed more appropriate for school. The rainbow bedspread Jennifer had picked out vanished, replaced by a tasteful blue quilt that matched Catherine's new color scheme for the house. One afternoon, Robert came home early to find Mrs. Wilson sorting through a box of framed photographs, mostly of Jennifer, with Emma or Robert. "What's happening here?" he asked. Mrs. Wilson looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Sullivan asked me to store these in the attic. She said they were cluttering the living spaces." Robert frowned. "These have always been out." "I know, sir. That's why I was waiting to ask you before moving them." Robert thanked her and took the box to his study, troubled by Catherine's decision to remove these memories without discussing it with him. When he brought it up that evening, Catherine's explanation seemed reasonable on the surface. "I thought it might be easier for Emma to move forward if she weren't surrounded by constant reminders," she said. "My therapist friend says that sometimes physical spaces need to change for emotional healing to occur." "But those are our memories," Robert protested. "Emma treasures those photos." Catherine touched his face gently. "Of course, if it's important to you, we can keep some out. I'm just trying to help create a healthy environment for all of us. A fresh start." Her words made sense, yet something felt wrong. That night, Robert replaced several photos in the living room and Emma's bedroom, including Jennifer's favorite of her and Emma at the beach. The next day, he noticed they had been rearranged, still visible, but less prominently displayed. As Halloween approached, Emma asked if they could carve pumpkins, a tradition she had shared with Jennifer. "Of course," Robert promised. "We'll do it this weekend." But when Saturday came, Catherine had scheduled a photo shoot with a professional photographer for our first holiday cards as a family, she explained. "I've ordered matching outfits for the children." Emma's disappointment was palpable, but she didn't protest. Robert promised they would carve pumpkins the following weekend instead. That night, he found Emma sitting on her window seat again, staring at the stars. Joining her, he asked, "Still looking for Mom up there?" Emma nodded. "I think she's trying to tell me something, but I can't hear her anymore." The words sent a chill through Robert. "What do you mean, Em?" "The house feels different now," Emma whispered. "Like all the happy got pushed into corners where we can't find it." Robert pulled her close, troubled by her words, yet unable to pinpoint exactly what was wrong. "We're just finding our way, sweetheart. New families take time." "Is Catherine going to make Mrs. Wilson go away forever?" Emma asked suddenly. "What? No, of course not. Why would you think that?" She told Tyler that Mrs. Wilson interferes too much. "I heard her." Robert made a mental note to speak with Catherine about this. "Mrs. Wilson isn't going anywhere," he assured Emma, though a seed of doubt had been planted. As he kissed her goodnight, Emma clutched his hand. "Daddy, promise you won't go away too?" "I'm not going anywhere," Robert promised, wondering what had prompted such a fear. "I'll always be here for you." But as the autumn leaves fell and winter approached, Robert found himself working later hours, drawn into an ambitious new project that Catherine had encouraged him to pursue. "It's such an opportunity," she had insisted. "Emma and Tyler will be fine with me." And so, bit by bit, Robert spent less time at home, missing the subtle shifts in his daughter's behavior, the growing tension in the house, and the widening distance between the life he thought they were building and the reality that existed behind his back. December arrived with swirling snow and holiday preparations that Catherine orchestrated with military precision. The Sullivan home, now thoroughly redesigned to Catherine's taste, was transformed into a showcase of understated elegance, with cream and silver decorations replacing the colorful ornaments Jennifer had collected over the years. "It's like a department store," Mrs. Wilson muttered one morning as she dusted the immaculate mantel, where crystal snowflakes had replaced Emma's handmade decorations. "What was that?" Catherine asked sharply, entering the living room with a clipboard. "Just admiring your decorating skills, ma'am," Mrs. Wilson replied, her expression neutral. Catherine smiled thinly. "The charity board is coming for drinks tomorrow evening. Everything needs to be perfect." She ran a finger along the mantel, checking for dust. "Speaking of which, I've revised your duties. The children's bathrooms need daily attention, not just twice weekly." Mrs. Wilson's jaw tightened. "Mr. Sullivan approved this change." "My husband trusts me to manage the household," Catherine replied, the familiar refrain delivered with practiced patience. "Oh, and Emma needs to polish her recital shoes before tonight. Make sure she does it properly this time." As Catherine clicked away on her heels, Mrs. Wilson found Emma in the kitchen, half-heartedly picking at a bowl of oatmeal. Not hungry this morning, Miss Emma? The housekeeper asked gently. Emma shrugged. Catherine says I'm getting pudgy and need to watch what I eat. Mrs. Wilson's eyes flashed. Nonsense, you're a growing girl who needs proper nutrition. She discreetly slid a banana and a small yogurt toward Emma. A little extra won't hurt? Emma glanced nervously toward the doorway before quickly eating the additional food. Thank you, she whispered. Your stepmother says you need to polish your recital shoes, Mrs. Wilson added. I already did, Emma said, her voice small. But she said they weren't shiny enough. Mrs. Wilson patted her hand. I'll help you after school. No, Emma said quickly. She'll know. She said I have to do it myself or I can't perform. The winter piano recital had once been Emma's favorite event. Jennifer had started her on lessons at age 5, and Emma had inherited her mother's natural talent. This year, however, she practiced with mechanical precision rather than joy. Her small shoulders tense when Catherine supervised her rehearsals. That evening, Robert attended the recital, proudly watching Emma perform Beethoven's Für Elise with technical perfection, if little emotion. Catherine, elegant in cashmere and pearls, recorded the performance on her phone while maintaining a camera-ready smile. She played beautifully, Robert said afterward, hugging Emma. She did, Catherine agreed, though her tempo was uneven in the middle section. We'll need to work on that before the spring showcase. Emma's smile faded slightly, but she nodded obediently. Tyler, who had been sitting quietly beside Catherine, gave Emma a small thumbs up when his mother wasn't looking. The silent gesture of solidarity didn't escape Robert's notice, and he found himself increasingly aware of the undercurrents between the children. The following week, Robert's business partner Mike cornered him after a meeting. Haven't seen much of you outside work lately, Mike observed. How's domestic bliss? Good, busy, Robert replied automatically. Catherine's been amazing with the kids, the house and everything. Mike raised an eyebrow. And Emma, how's she adjusting? Robert hesitated. She's adapting. It's been an adjustment for everyone. Jennifer would want her to be happy, Mike said carefully. You too. We are happy, Robert insisted, though the words rang hollow even to his own ears. It's just different now. That evening, Robert made a point of spending time with Emma, helping with her science project, a model of the solar system she'd been working on for weeks. As they painted Neptune blue, he asked casually, how are things going with Catherine? Better? Emma concentrated on her paintbrush. Fine, just fine. You can tell me if there are problems, Em. Emma was quiet for so long that Robert thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she said, she's different when you're not here. Robert set down his paintbrush. Different how? She gets mad easier. Makes more rules. Emma glanced toward the door. She told Tyler and me not to bother you with silly complaints because you have important work to do. Robert frowned. Nothing you tell me is silly, Emma, nothing. Emma bit her lip. She said, if I can't be grateful for my new family, maybe I don't deserve nice things. What does that mean? She took away my telescope last week because I didn't say thank you for dinner right away. Emma's voice trembled slightly. And she said Mrs. Wilson might have to stop coming if I keep running to her with problems. Robert felt a surge of unease. That doesn't sound like Catherine. It is, though, Emma insisted. She just doesn't let you see. Before Robert could respond, Catherine appeared in the doorway. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. Her tone was light, but her eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of their project. Emma, it's almost bedtime. You can finish this tomorrow. We're just about done, Robert said. 5 more minutes. Catherine's smile tightened. She has that math test tomorrow, remember? She needs proper rest. Robert glanced at Emma, who was already putting away her paints without argument. The automatic compliance bothered him more than he could articulate. I'll tuck you in shortly, he told Emma, who nodded and slipped past Catherine with her head down. Once Emma was gone, Catherine sighed. I hate to be the disciplinarian, but structure is important for children. Emma says you took away her telescope, Robert said directly. The one Jennifer gave her. Catherine looked momentarily surprised before composing herself. Only temporarily. She'd been using it past bedtime and was exhausted the next day. I explained she could have it back when she demonstrated more responsibility. The explanation sounded reasonable, but something about Catherine's too smooth response troubled Robert, and threatening Mrs. Wilson's position. Catherine's eyes hardened briefly before she gave a small laugh. I never said any such thing. Robert, you know how children exaggerate when they don't get their way. Emma doesn't typically exaggerate, Robert countered. She's testing boundaries, Catherine said, her voice softening as she touched his arm. It's perfectly normal at her age, especially with a new parent figure. The child psychology books all say, She's not just any child, Robert interrupted. She's my daughter and I know her. Catherine's expression shifted to one of hurt. I'm only trying to help, to be a mother to her. Robert felt immediate guilt at her wounded look. I know, he conceded. I just worry about her. We both do, Catherine assured him. But we need to be consistent. When you undermine my authority with the children, it confuses them. Later that night, Robert checked on Emma, finding her already asleep with her stuffed rabbit clutched tightly. On impulse, he opened her closet, searching for the telescope. He found it on the highest shelf, well out of Emma's reach, along with several other items, her favorite books, her mother's jewelry box, and a framed photo of Jennifer that had disappeared from her nightstand weeks ago. Troubled, Robert returned the telescope and the photograph to Emma's bedside table. As he turned to leave, he noticed a folded piece of paper tucked inside her science textbook. Hesitating only briefly, he opened it to find a letter in Emma's careful handwriting. Dear Daddy, I'm trying to be good like Catherine wants, but it's hard. The house feels cold now. Tyler says we should just do what she says so she won't get mad. But I miss how things used to be. I miss Mrs. Wilson being here every day. I miss you being home more. Catherine says I should be grateful, but sometimes I'm scared. Please don't be mad at me. The letter wasn't dated, and Robert couldn't tell if she'd intended to give it to him or had just needed to express her feelings. Either way, it left him deeply unsettled. Was he missing something crucial happening in his own home? The next morning, Robert deliberately came downstairs early before Catherine was awake. He found Emma sitting alone at the kitchen island, meticulously copying math problems. Morning, sweetheart, he said, kissing the top of her head. Studying before school? Emma nodded. Catherine says my handwriting is too messy. I have to redo these problems from last night. Robert examined the worksheet. Emma's original work was neat and correct, her handwriting typical for an 8-year-old. Your work looks fine to me. Catherine says presentation matters as much as correct answers. Emma recited as if repeating a frequently heard phrase. Robert noticed dark circles under his daughter's eyes. Did you sleep okay? I had bad dreams again. Emma looked up hopefully. I found my telescope back on my table. Did you put it there? I did. It was a gift from Mom. It belongs with you. Emma's face lit up briefly before falling again. Catherine might get mad. Let me worry about Catherine, Robert said. A thought struck him. Does Catherine ever punish you when I'm not around? Emma's eyes darted toward the doorway. Not punish exactly, she said carefully. She just has rules. And what kind of rules? Like you, was it like, Tyler gets to watch TV if he finishes homework, but I have to do extra chores first. Emma hesitated. And sometimes I don't get dessert if I don't finish everything on my plate, even when Tyler doesn't finish his. That doesn't seem fair, Robert said gently. Catherine says life isn't fair. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. She says I'm lucky she even wants me. Robert felt as if he'd been struck. She said that to you? Emma nodded miserably. When I spilled juice on the living room rug last week, she made me clean it up 3 times even though it was already clean. She said I was careless like Ian. She stopped abruptly. Like who, Em? Like Mom, Emma whispered, her eyes filling with tears. She said Mom must have been careless too, to leave us alone. Robert's blood ran cold. The cruelty of the statement, and the fact that Catherine had invoked Jennifer's memory in such a way, stunned him. Before he could respond, they heard Catherine's footsteps on the stairs. Emma quickly returned to her math problems, her posture stiffening. Catherine entered the kitchen in her silk robe, surprise flickering across her face at the sight of Robert. You're up early, she observed, moving to the coffee maker. Big day at the office? I wanted to have breakfast with Emma, Robert said, studying his wife carefully. Catherine smiled. How nice. I see she's fixing her math homework. Much better this time, right, Emma? Emma nodded without looking up. Yes, Catherine. I've been thinking, Robert said casually. I might take some time off next week. Maybe we could all go up to the cabin in Vermont for a few days before Christmas. Catherine's smile faltered slightly. Next week? But I have the charity luncheon on Tuesday and the children have school until Friday. They can miss a few days. Family time is important. Of course it is, Catherine agreed smoothly. But perhaps we should wait until their scheduled break. I wouldn't want to disrupt their education. I think a short break would do us all good, Robert insisted. I've been working too much lately. Missing too much around here. Something flashed in Catherine's eyes, annoyance, concern, before she controlled her expression. Well, if you really think it's best, the children and I will accommodate your schedule. Of course. As Catherine busied herself with breakfast preparations, Robert watched her interact with Emma, the subtle corrections to her posture, the pointed comments about proper nutrition when Emma reached for the syrup, the way Emma seemed to shrink under Catherine's gaze. It was all so subtle that he'd missed it before, or perhaps dismissed it as normal step-parent adjustment. Tyler appeared in the doorway, already dressed for school in the preppy uniform Catherine had selected, his expression brightening at the sight of Robert. "Morning, Robert," he said, his voice more animated than usual. "Good morning, buddy," Robert replied, noting how Tyler, too, seemed more relaxed in his presence. "How about I drive you kids to school today? Don't you have that meeting with the Cambridge investors?" Catherine interjected. "I'll reschedule," Robert said firmly. "Some things are more important." As they prepared to leave, Robert noticed Catherine pull Emma aside, whispering something in her ear that made the girl's shoulders tense. When he asked Emma about it in the car, after dropping Tyler at the elementary side of the school, she just shook her head. "Emma," Robert said gently. "Whatever Catherine said, you can tell me." Emma stared out the window for a long moment before answering. "She said I shouldn't bother you with stories and complaints because you're stressed enough with work." Her voice dropped even lower. "And that if I make trouble, she might have to send me to boarding school where they teach proper behavior." Robert's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "That is never going to happen. Ever, do you understand me?" Emma nodded but didn't look convinced. As she gathered her backpack to leave, she said, "Daddy, if I wrote you a letter, would you read it? Even if it was in your work bag?" "Of course I would," Robert assured her, puzzled by the question. "Promise?" Emma pressed, her blue eyes serious. "I promise," Robert said, not realizing the significance of the exchange until much later. The week before Christmas brought unexpected complications. Robert's Vermont cabin plans were derailed when the development project's key investor demanded an emergency meeting in New York. Despite Robert's reluctance, the meeting couldn't be postponed. "It's just for 3 days," he explained to Emma as he packed his suitcase. "I'll be back Thursday night, and then we'll have the whole weekend together before Christmas." Emma sat on the edge of his bed, her face carefully blank. "It's okay, Daddy, I understand." "Are you sure you're all right with me going?" Robert pressed, troubled by her resignation. "I can try to make other arrangements." "Catherine already explained why it's important," Emma said, her voice small. "She said successful men have responsibilities." Robert knelt to her level. "You're my most important responsibility, Em. Always." Emma's eyes darted toward the hallway before she leaned forward to whisper, "I left something in your briefcase. Look at it on the train, okay?" Before Robert could ask what she meant, Catherine appeared in the doorway. "Emma, homework time. Let your father finish packing." Emma slid off the bed, giving Robert a quick hug before disappearing down the hall. Catherine entered, closing the door behind her. "I hate leaving like this," Robert said, returning to his packing. "It's only a few days," Catherine assured him, handing him his toiletry bag. "The children and I will manage perfectly well. We might even finish the Christmas shopping." "About that," Robert said. "Emma mentioned you threatened to send her to boarding school." "That's not something we've ever discussed." Catherine's expression registered surprise followed by hurt. "I never said any such thing." "Robert, surely you don't believe I would threaten your daughter?" "Emma doesn't typically lie," Robert countered, watching Catherine carefully. "She's not lying exactly," Catherine sighed. "She's seeking attention. I mentioned that my cousin's children attend a prestigious boarding school in Connecticut, and perhaps she misinterpreted." She touched his arm. "You know how children exaggerate when they feel insecure." Robert wanted to believe her explanation, but doubt lingered. "Just be gentle with her while I'm gone. She's more fragile than she lets on." Of course, Catherine agreed readily. I'll make sure both children have a wonderful few days. Perhaps we'll bake Christmas cookies. That's what families do, isn't it? The next morning, Robert kissed Emma goodbye before dawn. I'll call every night, he promised, and I'll be back before you know it. Remember to check your briefcase, Emma whispered urgently as she hugged him. In the taxi to the train station, Robert finally opened his briefcase and found a folded piece of construction paper tucked between his files. On it, Emma had drawn what appeared to be their family: Robert, Emma, Tyler, and Catherine. But the proportions were disturbing. Catherine loomed large and dark over the children, while Robert was positioned far away, his figure small and facing away from the group. At the bottom, Emma had written in her careful script, "Please come home soon, Daddy. The house gets scary when you're gone." Robert stared at the drawing, a cold unease settling in his stomach. Children's art often exaggerated, but the symbolism was unmistakable and matched too closely with Emma's whispered confidences. He pulled out his phone to call home, then stopped, realizing Catherine would likely answer. Instead, he texted Mrs. Wilson, "Can you keep an extra close eye on Emma while I'm gone? Call me if anything seems wrong." The housekeeper's response came quickly. "Always do. Mr. Sullivan, don't worry." But worry he did. Throughout the train ride and during the interminable meetings in New York, each night, he called home promptly at 8, Catherine's designated time for the children to speak with him. The conversations felt strangely scripted, with Catherine hovering nearby, occasionally prompting Emma or Tyler with, "Tell Daddy about the Christmas tree," or "Mention your good grade on the spelling test." On the second night, Robert asked to speak to Emma alone for a moment. After a brief hesitation, Catherine agreed. Once she was off the line, Robert asked softly, "Everything okay there, Em?" "Really okay." There was a pause before Emma answered, her voice barely audible. "We're following all the rules. Tyler too." "What rules, sweetheart?" "Catherine's rules. No noise, no mess. Extra chores before play." Emma's voice dropped even lower. "She took away my rabbit because I spilled milk at breakfast." Robert's grip tightened on the phone. The stuffed rabbit had been Jennifer's last gift to Emma. "Put Catherine back on, please." When Catherine came on the line, her voice was pleasant. "Yes, dear?" "Emma says you took away her stuffed rabbit," Robert said without preamble. "Oh, that," Catherine sighed. "Just temporarily. She needs to learn consequences for carelessness. Don't worry, she'll get it back when she demonstrates more responsibility." "That rabbit was a gift from Jennifer," Robert said, struggling to keep his voice even. "It's not a disciplinary tool. Please give it back to her immediately." "Robert," Catherine's voice took on a wounded tone, "I'm trying to raise a responsible young woman here. Constant coddling won't help her in the long run. She's 8 years old, Catherine. There's a difference between coddling and basic compassion." Robert's patience was wearing thin. "Just give her back the rabbit. We'll discuss parenting approaches when I return." "Of course," Catherine agreed, though her tone had cooled considerably. "Whatever you think best." After hanging up, Robert called Mrs. Wilson's personal number. When she answered, he asked directly, "What's really going on at the house?" Mrs. Wilson hesitated. "Sir, I'm only there during the day, but Miss Emma seems very subdued. Mrs. Sullivan has her doing quite a lot of chores, washing windows, scrubbing bathrooms, more than seems appropriate for her age. And Tyler, he watches mostly. Seems afraid to intervene." Mrs. Wilson paused. "Yesterday, Miss Emma wasn't allowed lunch because she hadn't finished cleaning the guest bathroom to Mrs. Sullivan's standards." Robert closed his eyes, feeling physically ill. "Why didn't you call me?" "Mrs. Sullivan said you weren't to be disturbed with household matters while on your important trip," Mrs. Wilson admitted. "And she's made it clear my position is precarious." "I'll be home tomorrow night," Robert said firmly. "Until then, please stay as late as you can. Make sure Emma eats properly." "I'll do my best, sir." The following day crawled by, each meeting seeming longer than the last. Robert tried calling home during his lunch break, but no one answered. When he finally reached Catherine that evening, she explained smoothly that they'd been out Christmas shopping. "The children are exhausted," she told him. "Already in bed, I'm afraid. But they're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow." "Put them on anyway," Robert insisted. "Just for a minute." "They're asleep, Robert," Catherine said, a note of impatience creeping into her voice. "I don't want to wake them. They have school tomorrow. Just check on them, please. Catherine sighed audibly. Hold on. The line went silent for nearly 2 minutes before Catherine returned. Sound asleep, as I said. Tyler's sprawled across his bed with his storybook, and Emma's curled up with that rabbit you were so concerned about. See? All is well. Robert wasn't convinced, but there was little he could do from New York. I'll be on the 3:00 train tomorrow. Should be home by 7:00. We'll have a special dinner waiting, Catherine promised, her voice warming again. The children miss you. I miss you. After hanging up, Robert texted Mrs. Wilson again. Please check on Emma first thing tomorrow. Make sure she's all right. The housekeeper's response, will do, provided small comfort as he tried to sleep in the impersonal hotel room. The next morning, Robert's phone woke him at 6:30 a.m. It was Mrs. Wilson, her voice tight with concern. Mr. Sullivan, I came in early as you asked. Miss Emma's not well. She says she hasn't eaten since yesterday's breakfast. Apparently, she broke one of Mrs. Sullivan's crystal glasses while drying dishes, and her punishment was no meals. Mrs. Wilson's voice shook with suppressed anger. The poor child was trying to wash her school uniform in the bathroom sink when I arrived, because she'd been made to kneel and scrub the kitchen floor last night and got her clothes dirty. Robert sat up, fully awake now, fury coursing through him. Where's Catherine? Still asleep, I believe. I gave Miss Emma some toast and eggs in my room, away from the kitchen. She made me promise not to tell Mrs. Sullivan. And Tyler. Seems all right physically, though very quiet. He whispered an apology to Miss Emma for not helping her. Listen carefully, Robert said, already throwing clothes into his suitcase. I'm coming home now. Keep the children with you as much as possible. If Catherine questions you, tell her I asked you to help the kids prepare a surprise for me or something. Just keep them safe until I get there. Yes, sir. What about school? Robert thought quickly. If you can get them out of the house to school without confrontation, do it. It might be safer than keeping them home with Catherine. I'll meet you there as soon as I arrive. After hanging up, Robert called his business partner Mike, explaining that he had a family emergency and needed to return immediately. Mike, hearing the urgency in his voice, didn't question further, agreeing to handle the final meeting. On the train back to Boston, Robert's mind raced. How had he missed the signs? The changes in Emma, her whispered confidences, the drawing, all pointed to a troubling reality he'd been unwilling to see. Catherine's mask of perfection concealed something darker, something that emerged only when he wasn't watching. His phone chimed with a text from Mrs. Wilson. Children safely at school. Mrs. Sullivan not pleased about my early arrival, but didn't prevent their departure. We'll stay at school as volunteer today to keep watch. Relief washed over him, followed by renewed determination. He needed to get his children away from Catherine immediately, but he also needed to understand the full extent of what had been happening in his home. The train seemed to crawl through Connecticut and Rhode Island. By the time it reached Boston, Robert was wound tight with anxiety and anger. He took a taxi directly to Emma's school, arriving just as the lunch period was ending. In the front office, he explained that he needed to see his daughter immediately. The secretary, recognizing him, called Emma from her classroom. When she appeared in the doorway, her face lit up with surprise and relief. Daddy, you're not supposed to be home yet. Robert knelt, embracing her tightly, noting how thin she felt in his arms. I came home early because I missed you too much, he said, examining her face. The dark circles under her eyes were more pronounced than before, and she seemed pale. Mrs. Wilson gave me breakfast, Emma whispered. Please don't tell Catherine. You never have to worry about Catherine again, Robert promised, his resolve hardening. Where's Tyler? I need to see him too. He's in the younger wing, Emma said. Are we going home now? Not yet, Robert said. I need to talk to your principal first, and then we're going to pick up Tyler. We might stay somewhere special tonight, just the three of us. How does that sound? Emma's eyes widened. What about Catherine? Let me worry about Catherine, Robert said, his voice gentle but firm. You're safe now. I promise. After a brief conversation with the principal, in which Robert explained vaguely that there was a family situation requiring the children's early dismissal, they collected Tyler from his classroom. The 6-year-old seemed confused but relieved to see Robert, clutching his hand tightly as they walked to the taxi. Are we in trouble? Tyler asked in a small voice. Absolutely not, Robert assured him. But I need to ask you both some important questions about what happens at home when I'm not there. Can you be brave and tell me the truth? Both children nodded solemnly, exchanging glances that spoke volumes about their shared experiences. As the taxi pulled away from the school, Robert sent a final text to Mrs. Wilson. Have the children. Don't return to the house today. We'll contact you later. Then he turned to Emma and Tyler, his heart breaking at their apprehensive expressions. I need you to tell me everything, he said gently. Start from the beginning. The Fairmont Hotel suite offered a panoramic view of Boston Common, now blanketed in snow and twinkling with holiday lights. Under different circumstances, it would have been a magical sight for the children. Instead, Emma and Tyler sat close together on the sofa, their small shoulders touching as if drawing strength from each other as they answered Robert's gentle questions. It started with little things, Emma explained, her fingers nervously pleating the hem of her skirt. Extra chores for me, but not Tyler. No dessert if I didn't eat everything, even when I wasn't hungry. Tyler nodded, his green eyes, so like his mother's, wide with anxiety. Mom said Emma needed to learn discipline because she was spoiled. Were you spoiled, Em? Robert asked softly. Emma shook her head. I tried to be good. I did everything Catherine said, but it was never right. She always found something wrong. As the children recounted the past months, Robert felt physically ill. Catherine's campaign had been insidious, small cruelties that escalated gradually, always carefully hidden from him. Emma described punishments that went far beyond reasonable discipline, scrubbing floors on her knees until her hands cracked and bled, being denied meals for minor infractions, having treasured possessions confiscated indefinitely. She made me wash all the windows last Saturday, Emma said. When I couldn't reach the high ones, she said I was being lazy on purpose. I wanted to help, Tyler interjected, his voice trembling. But Mom said Emma needed to learn independence. She said if I told you, you wouldn't believe me, Emma continued. That you'd think I was making up stories because I was jealous of her. Robert moved to sit between them, putting an arm around each child. I believe every word, and I'm so sorry I didn't see what was happening sooner. It's not your fault, Daddy, Emma said with a child's generosity. Catherine is really good at pretending. Tyler looked up anxiously. Are you mad at me? For not stopping her? Nobody, not at all, Robert assured him. You're just a little boy. It wasn't your responsibility to stop your mum. I tried to give Emma some of my food sometimes, Tyler confessed, when Mom wasn't looking. That was very brave, Robert told him, his heart breaking for both children, one victimized directly, the other forced to witness his mother's cruelty. What happens now? Emma asked, the practical question cutting through the emotion. Robert had been considering this very question since the train ride home. First, we're staying here tonight. Tomorrow we'll go back to the house when Catherine is at her charity meeting. Will she be there when we get home? Tyler asked, fear evident in his voice. Eventually, Robert admitted, but things will be very different. I promise you both that Catherine will never treat either of you that way again. After ordering room service, the children's eyes widening, at being allowed to choose whatever they wanted, Robert stepped onto the balcony to make a difficult call. Mike answered on the second ring. Everything okay? You left New York like the building was on fire. I need legal advice, Robert said without preamble, not as my business partner. As my friend who happens to be a lawyer. There was a pause. That sounds serious. It is. Robert briefly outlined what he'd discovered. I need to protect Emma and frankly Tyler too. Jesus, Robert, Mike breathed. I had no idea. Neither did I, Robert said grimly. That's the worst part. It was happening right under my nose. Do you have documentation? Evidence. Emma's testimony. Tyler's too. Mrs. Wilson has witnessed some incidents. And there's physical evidence. Emma's hands are cracked and raw from being forced to clean with harsh chemicals. That's a start, Mike said. But Catherine will deny everything, claim the kids are exaggerating or misinterpreting normal discipline. You need more. Like what? Photos of any injuries, written statements from witnesses. If Emma made any drawings or wrote any letters describing the abuse, those help too. Mike paused. And you need to report this, Robert. Child Protective Services should be notified. The word abuse hit Robert like a physical blow. That's what this was. though he'd been avoiding the term even in his own thoughts. His daughter had been abused in her own home, by someone he had brought into her life. "What about custody?" Robert asked. "Catherine isn't Emma's legal parent, but Tyler." "One step at a time," Mike counseled. "Document everything. Get statements. Take photos. I'll come over first thing tomorrow to help you strategize." "What's your plan for tonight?" "Keeping the kids safe at the Fairmont. Catherine thinks we're coming home tomorrow evening." "Good, keep it that way. Element of surprise works in your favor." After hanging up, Robert stood watching the snow fall, wrestling with guilt and anger in equal measure. How had he failed to protect his daughter? How had he been so blind to Catherine's true nature? A small hand slipped into his. Emma had joined him on the balcony, her face solemn in the glow of the city lights. "Are you okay, Daddy?" Robert looked down at his daughter, so resilient, so concerned for him even after all she'd endured, and felt a surge of fierce love. "I'm supposed to be asking you that question." "Mrs. Wilson says we'll be okay as long as we stick together," Emma said with simple faith. "Mrs. Wilson is very wise," Robert agreed, echoing his words from what seemed a lifetime ago. "And she's right." Back inside, they found Tyler had fallen asleep on the sofa, the stress of the day finally catching up with him. Robert carefully carried him to one of the suite's bedrooms, tucking him in without waking him. "He gets nightmares too," Emma informed Robert as they watched Tyler sleep. "Catherine gets mad when he cries." "He's safe now," Robert assured her. "You both are." That night, after Emma had finally fallen asleep, in the same bed as Tyler, as if neither child wanted to be alone, Robert sat in the suite's living area, compiling notes on his laptop. Every incident the children had described, every instance of Catherine's cruelty that he could recall or had previously dismissed, every warning sign he'd overlooked, he documented it all, the record growing longer and more damning with each entry. Around midnight, his phone lit up with Catherine's name. He had been ignoring her calls and texts all evening, but now he hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Finally he answered. "Where are you?" Catherine demanded without preamble. "And where are my children?" "The children are safe," Robert replied, his voice deliberately calm. "We'll talk tomorrow." "This is completely unacceptable," Catherine hissed. "You can't just take Tyler without my permission. I'll call the police." "Go ahead," Robert said evenly. "I'm sure they'd be very interested in hearing why Emma's hands are cracked and bleeding, or why she hasn't been properly fed for days." There was a moment of stunned silence before Catherine's tone changed completely. "Robert, darling, there's been a terrible misunderstanding." "Whatever Emma told you." "Save it, Catherine," Robert interrupted. "I've heard enough from both children, and Mrs. Wilson, and Emma's teacher. The picture is pretty clear. Those children are manipulating you," Catherine insisted, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "Emma resents me because I'm not her real mother. And Tyler, he's always been impressionable, easily influenced by stronger personalities." "Enough," Robert said firmly. "We'll discuss this tomorrow. The children are staying with me tonight." "You have no right to keep my son from me," Catherine said, her voice hardening again. "None whatsoever. Actually, as his stepfather and your husband, I have every right to ensure his safety," Robert countered. "Just as you had a responsibility to treat my daughter with basic human decency. A responsibility you failed spectacularly." Catherine's laugh was cold. "You think anyone will believe you? The grieving widower who couldn't handle his perfect wife's memory being replaced, who projected his insecurities onto his new wife's parenting. Good luck with that narrative, Robert." The calculated cruelty of her words and the glimpse they offered into Catherine's true character strengthened Robert's resolve. "Goodbye, Catherine. I'll see you tomorrow." After hanging up, Robert called the hotel's front desk, requesting that no calls be put through to his suite and that no information about his stay be provided to anyone. Then he contacted Mrs. Wilson, asking her to meet him at the house the following morning, while Catherine was at her charity board meeting. Sleep eluded him as he sat watch over the children, his mind cycling through anger, guilt, and determination. By dawn, his course was set. Whatever it took, he would protect these children, both of them, from Catherine's poison. The next morning, after room service breakfast and reassurances to both children, Robert left them in the care of Mike's wife, Lisa, who had agreed to stay with them at the hotel while the men went to the house. "Emma might have another letter hidden somewhere," Robert explained as they drove through the snowy streets. And I want to check if Catherine set up any cameras. She made a comment once about installing a security system to keep an eye on things when I travel. Good thinking, Mike said. If she recorded her own behavior, that's the best evidence possible. Mrs. Wilson was waiting in her car when they arrived, her normally calm face tight with worry. Mrs. Sullivan left for her meeting about 20 minutes ago, she reported. Should be gone at least 3 hours. Inside, the house was immaculate as always, Catherine's elegant Christmas decorations perfectly arranged. Robert headed straight for his study, where he kept important documents in a fireproof safe. Birth certificates, financial records, insurance policies, he explained to Mike as he retrieved a stack of folders. I want everything essential out of the house before confronting Catherine. While Robert gathered documents, Mike conducted a methodical search for recording devices. In the kitchen, he discovered a small camera disguised as a smoke detector. Bingo, he called to Robert. Let's see what this captured. Mrs. Wilson, meanwhile, went to Emma's room. Miss Emma asked me to check on something, she explained, heading for the child's bookshelf. From behind a row of books, she carefully extracted a small diary with a unicorn on the cover. She said Catherine doesn't know about this. She hides it differently every day. Robert took the diary with reverence, understanding the trust Emma had placed in him by revealing its existence. I'll make sure she gets it back, he promised Mrs. Wilson. As they continued their search, a more complete picture emerged. Catherine had indeed installed cameras throughout the common areas of the house, ostensibly for security, but more likely to monitor the children and Mrs. Wilson when Robert was away. The memory cards from these devices might contain crucial evidence. In Emma's closet, Mrs. Wilson found several of the girls' favorite possessions hidden under a floorboard, small treasures she'd managed to keep from Catherine's confiscation campaign. So among them was a photo of Jennifer that Catherine had claimed was lost during redecorating. She's been systematically erasing Jennifer from this house, Robert realized, holding the photograph of his late wife and punishing Emma for keeping her memory alive. In the master bedroom, Robert packed essential clothing for himself and the children. As he gathered Emma's things, he noticed how many of her colorful, playful outfits had been replaced by the subdued, prim clothing Catherine preferred. We'll buy new things, he muttered to himself. Whatever they want. In Catherine's home office, Mike discovered financial records revealing another disturbing pattern. Catherine had been systematically transferring funds from their joint accounts to private accounts in her name only. Small amounts that wouldn't immediately raise flags, but significant in aggregate. She's been planning an exit strategy, Mike observed grimly. Probably since day one. By noon, they had loaded Robert's car with essential documents, clothing, and evidence. As a final measure, Robert left a brief note on the kitchen counter. Catherine, I know everything. The children will remain with me. My lawyer will contact you regarding next steps. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Wilson hesitated in the foyer. Mr. Sullivan, there's something else you should know. She led them to the kitchen pantry, where she pulled out a step stool to reach the highest shelf. From behind a row of seldom-used serving dishes, she retrieved a small white tablet bottle. I found Catherine crushing these into Miss Emma's food last week, she explained, handing the unlabeled bottle to Robert. When I asked what they were, she said they were children's vitamins that Emma refused to take willingly. But, she paused, clearly uncomfortable. They made Miss Emma very drowsy. Unusually so for vitamins. Robert examined the unmarked pills with growing horror. We need to have these analyzed immediately. I have a friend at Mass General who can help, Mike said, taking the bottle. If these are what I suspect, some kind of sedative, that's another level of abuse entirely. The implications turned Robert's blood cold. Had Catherine been drugging his daughter? To what end? To keep her compliant? To ensure she would be too groggy to report the abuse? The possibilities were too terrible to contemplate. As they finally left the house, Robert took one last look at the elegant facade he had once considered home. Behind those perfect windows, his daughter had suffered while he remained oblivious. Never again, he vowed silently. Never again would he fail to see what was right in front of him. In the car, his phone chimed with a text from Lisa. Children doing fine. Emma helped Tyler build a fort out of hotel blankets. They're watching cartoons and eating popcorn. No rush. The simple normalcy of the scene described brought tears to Robert's eyes. This was childhood as it should be. safe, joyful, free from fear. And he would move heaven and earth to ensure Emma and Tyler could live that way from now on. Where to? Mike asked as they pulled away from the curb. Back to the hotel, Robert decided. I want to be there when Catherine discovers we've been to the house. The children shouldn't be alone if she shows up. And then, Mrs. Wilson asked from the back seat. Robert's jaw set with determination. And then we fight for both children, whatever it takes. The hotel suite had transformed in their absence. Lisa, Mike's wife, had not only watched the children, but had helped them create an impromptu Christmas celebration. A small artificial tree from the hotel gift shop now stood in the corner, decorated with paper ornaments Emma and Tyler had crafted. Popcorn garlands draped across the branches, and wrapped hotel chocolates served as makeshift presents underneath. They needed something normal, Lisa explained quietly to Robert. Something festive. Emma ran to Robert as he entered, wrapping her arms around his waist. We made Christmas, Daddy. And Mrs. Wilson. She released Robert to hug the housekeeper, who embraced her fiercely. Tyler hung back, uncertainty clouding his features. Is my mom coming here? He asked, his voice small. Robert knelt to the boy's level. Not right now, buddy. Right now it's just us, and we're going to figure things out together. Is that okay? Tyler nodded solemnly. Emma says you won't let Mom hurt her anymore. Will you let Mom hurt me either? The simple question broke Robert's heart. No, Tyler. I won't let anyone hurt either of you ever again. While the children showed Mrs. Wilson their tree, Robert conferred with Mike and Lisa in the suite's kitchenette. I've had the pills sent to my contact at the lab, Mike reported. Should have preliminary results by tomorrow. I've also started drafting emergency custody paperwork. For both children? Robert asked. Mike nodded. It's complicated with Tyler, but given the circumstances and the evidence of abuse in the household, we have grounds for temporary emergency custody while the courts sort things out. What about criminal charges? Lisa asked, her voice hushed to prevent the children from overhearing. One step at a time, Mike cautioned. First priority is keeping the kids safe and away from Catherine. Criminal proceedings could take months or years. I don't care how long it takes, Robert said firmly. She doesn't get to hurt children and walk away. Their conversation was interrupted by the hotel phone. The front desk manager informed Robert that a Mrs. Sullivan was in the lobby demanding to know his room number. We haven't disclosed your suite number as requested, the manager assured him. But she's becoming quite insistent. Should we call security? No need to escalate, Robert decided. Tell her I'll meet her in the restaurant in 10 minutes. After hanging up, he turned to the others. Catherine's here. I need to face her directly, set boundaries immediately. I'll come with you, Mike offered. As your legal counsel. Robert nodded gratefully, then approached the children. I need to go downstairs for a little while, he explained. Mrs. Wilson and Lisa will stay with you. Emma's face clouded with worry. Is Catherine here? She is, Robert confirmed, seeing no point in lying. But she's not coming up to our room. I'm going to talk to her downstairs. She'll be really mad, Tyler warned, his eyes wide. When Mom gets really mad, her voice goes all cold and quiet. I know, buddy, Robert said gently. But I can handle it. And remember what I promised. She can't hurt either of you anymore. In the hotel restaurant, Catherine sat at a corner table, her posture perfect as always, dressed immaculately in a cream cashmere sweater and pearls. Only the tight line of her mouth and the rigidity of her shoulders betrayed her fury. Her expression darkened further when she saw Mike accompanying Robert. I wasn't aware this was a legal meeting, she said icily. Given the circumstances, I thought it prudent to have counsel present, Robert replied, sitting across from her. This isn't a negotiation, Catherine. I'm informing you of what happens next. Catherine's laugh was brittle. How dramatic. You break into our home, abscond with my son, leave a cryptic note, and now you're informing me of your decisions? I don't think so, Robert. We have evidence, Robert said simply, of your systematic abuse of Emma, your withholding of food, your assignment of inappropriate labor, your psychological cruelty. Parenting a spoiled child isn't abuse, Catherine countered. Emma needs structure and discipline, something you've clearly failed to provide. We also have evidence suggesting you've been medicating Emma without prescription or consent, Mike interjected. The pills you hid in the pantry are being analyzed as we speak. For the first time, Catherine's composure slipped. Her eyes widened fractionally, before she controlled her expression. Those are children's vitamins, nothing more. We'll know. Soon enough, Robert said. But even setting that aside, what you've done to Emma, making her scrub floors until her hands bled, denying her meals, taking away her cherished possessions, that's abuse, Catherine. Clear and simple. And what about my son? Catherine demanded. You have no right to keep him from me. Tyler told us everything, Robert said quietly. How you forced him to watch while you punished Emma, how you threatened him to keep him silent, how you've made him complicit in your cruelty. That's absurd, Catherine scoffed. Tyler would never say such things. He did, Robert insisted. And Emma's diary documents weeks of mistreatment, incidents, dates, details that a child couldn't invent. Catherine's eyes narrowed. So this is your plan? Use a manipulative child's fabrications to steal my son and destroy my reputation. Good luck with that, Robert. No court will award you custody of Tyler. You'd be surprised, Mike interjected. Courts take evidence of abuse in the home very seriously, regardless of which child was the primary target. And when they hear testimony from Mrs. Wilson, Emma's teacher, and the children themselves, Mrs. Wilson, Catherine spat the name like a curse. That interfering old woman should have been fired months ago. She protected my daughter when I failed to, Robert said. I'll be grateful to her for the rest of my life. Catherine leaned forward, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Robert. I will destroy you before I let you take my son. That sounds remarkably like a threat, Mike observed mildly, making a note in his phone. I'll add it to the record. Catherine sat back, visibly regrouping. After a moment, her expression softened and she reached for Robert's hand across the table. Darling, this has all spiraled out of control. We're both upset, saying things we don't mean. Let's take a step back, go home, and discuss this rationally. As a family, Robert withdrew his hand from her reach. There is no we anymore, Catherine. No family. You saw to that when you decided to torment an 8-year-old girl who had already lost her mother. I admit, I may have been too strict at times, Catherine conceded, her voice taking on a contrite tone that Robert now recognized as completely artificial. But my intentions were good. I only wanted to help Emma become her best self. By telling her she was worthless, by making her believe she deserved to be treated cruelly, by trying to erase her mother's memory. Robert shook his head in disgust. We're done here. He started to rise, but Catherine's next words stopped him cold. If you pursue this, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of father you really are. She threatened, abandoning the contrite act entirely. How you were so wrapped up in your business that you didn't notice your daughter was supposedly being abused, right under your nose. How you chose your new wife over your child's well-being. How you neglected your sacred duty as a parent. The accusations struck at Robert's deepest guilt, but he forced himself to meet her gaze steadily. You're right about one thing, he acknowledged. I failed Emma by not seeing what was happening sooner. That's something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life. He leaned closer, his voice hardening. But I'm not failing her now. And I won't fail Tyler either. Tyler is my son, Catherine hissed, her composure cracking completely. Tyler is a child who deserves to be safe and loved, Robert countered. Something you seem incapable of providing without conditions. Catherine's laugh was harsh. Oh, that's rich. The grieving widower who couldn't protect his own daughter presumes to lecture me on parenting. Tell me, Robert, did you even notice how Emma withdrew after I moved in? How she cried at night? Or were you too busy congratulating yourself on finding a replacement mother to pay attention? Each word was calculated to wound, and Robert felt them like physical blows. But they also confirmed everything he had begun to suspect about Catherine's true nature. The calculated cruelty, the emotional manipulation, the ability to identify and exploit others' vulnerabilities. This meeting is over, Mike interjected, standing. All further communication should go through legal channels. Formal custody petition will be filed tomorrow morning. Catherine's face contorted with rage. You'll regret this, Robert. Both of you. The only thing I regret, Robert said quietly, is that I didn't see through you sooner. As they walked away, Catherine called after them. When you fail, and you will fail, remember that you chose this path. Not me. In the elevator, Robert sagged against the wall, the confrontation having drained him completely. She's not going to make this easy. Did you expect her to? Mike asked wryly. No, Robert admitted, but I didn't expect her to be so transparent about her intentions either. It's like she's not even trying to hide what she is anymore. People like Catherine maintain the facade only as long as it serves them, Mike observed. Once exposed, they often drop the pretense entirely. Back in the suite, Emma and Tyler were playing a board game with Mrs. Wilson and Lisa, their faces more relaxed than Robert had seen in weeks. The normalcy of the scene strengthened his resolve. "Everything okay, Daddy?" Emma asked, studying his face. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," Robert assured her. "Just grown-up things. Did you see my mom?" Tyler asked hesitantly. Robert sat beside the boy. "I did. She's upset right now, but we're going to work things out." "Is she coming to take me away?" Tyler's voice quavered. "No, buddy. You're staying with us for now." Tyler's relief was palpable. "Good. I don't want to go with her. Not when she's like this." The simple statement from the 6-year-old reinforced for Robert that he was doing the right thing, however difficult the path ahead might be. No child should fear their own parent. No child should have to strategize their behavior to avoid cruelty. That evening, after the children were asleep, again sharing a bed, finding security in each other's presence, Robert, Mike, Lisa, and Mrs. Wilson gathered in the suite's living area to plan next steps. "The emergency custody petition will be filed first thing tomorrow," Mike explained. "Given the evidence we have and the statements from the children, I expect the judge will grant temporary custody to Robert while a full investigation proceeds." "What about Catherine's rights as Tyler's mother?" Lisa asked. "She'll likely be granted supervised visitation initially," Mike said, "but with allegations of abuse in the home, those visits will be closely monitored." "And the pills?" Robert pressed. "If they turn out to be sedatives or something similar, that would escalate the case significantly," Mike acknowledged. Administering unprescribed medication to a child is a serious offense. Mrs. Wilson, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "What about Miss Emma's school?" "And Master Tyler's. They should be notified of the situation." "Good point," Robert agreed. "I'll speak with both principals tomorrow." They continued planning well into the night. Practical details like retrieving more of the children's belongings, notifying relevant authorities, and establishing a temporary home environment that would feel safe and stable. "You should all stay with us until after the holidays," Lisa offered. "Our house has plenty of room, and the children would have company. Our kids would love to have playmates." Robert accepted gratefully, recognizing that returning to the house, with all its recent painful associations, wouldn't be healthy for any of them right now. Shortly after midnight, Robert's phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. The message contained only a photo of Emma's bedroom door slightly ajar, with the implication that Catherine was inside the children's empty rooms. "She's trying to intimidate you," Mike observed, looking over Robert's shoulder at the message. "Don't respond. Document everything." Another text arrived. "The house feels empty without the children, so quiet. I miss the sound of little feet." The deliberately ominous tone sent a chill through Robert. Should I be worried about what she might do? "Catherine is calculating," Mike said after a moment's consideration. "Everything she does serves a purpose. Right now she wants to unsettle you, make you doubt yourself, maybe provoke you into responding emotionally in a way she can use against you later. So I just ignore it?" "I'll document it. But don't engage," Mike advised. "And maybe consider changing your number tomorrow." As if hearing their conversation, a final text arrived. "You can't protect them forever, Robert. Eventually you'll lower your guard. And I'll be waiting." Robert stared at the words, feeling a mixture of anger and cold determination. "She's threatening my children," he said quietly. "She's lashing out," Mike corrected, trying to regain control of the situation. "Don't give her what she wants." Robert set the phone aside, his resolve hardening. "I need to make sure the children are safe," he said, moving to check on Emma and Tyler. In the darkened bedroom, he found them still sleeping peacefully, Emma's arm protectively draped over Tyler's shoulder. The sight simultaneously broke his heart and strengthened his determination. These children had formed their own alliance against cruelty. Now it was his turn to form an impenetrable shield around them both. As he quietly closed the door, Robert made a silent promise to Emma, to Tyler, and to Jennifer's memory. No matter what Catherine tried, No matter how long the battle, he would protect these children with everything he had. The facade of the perfect family had shattered, but from its ruins something genuine could finally emerge, if he was brave enough to fight for it, and fight he would. Starting tomorrow, spring sunshine filtered through the windows of the Victorian house in Cambridge, casting warm pools of light across the living room floor where Emma and Tyler sat, building an elaborate Lego structure. 4 months had passed since the December confrontation at the Fairmont Hotel. 4 months of legal proceedings, therapy sessions, and gradual healing. Robert watched the children from the kitchen doorway, a cup of coffee warming his hands. The changes in them were subtle but profound. Emma's smile came more readily now, her laughter no longer hesitant. Tyler's watchfulness had softened, his natural 6-year-old exuberance beginning to emerge from beneath the careful restraint Catherine had demanded. "They look happy," Mrs. Wilson observed, joining Robert with her own cup of tea. The housekeeper had become even more essential to their lives, providing continuity and stability during the transition to their new home, a warm, rambling Victorian that felt nothing like the cold perfection of the house Catherine had transformed. "They're getting there," Robert agreed. "Dr. Levine says Emma's nightmares are decreasing, and Tyler's starting to trust that the rules won't suddenly change." The early days after leaving the hotel had been difficult. They had stayed with Mike and Lisa through the holidays, creating new traditions to replace the painful memories of Catherine's orchestrated, perfect Christmas. Then came the search for a new home, somewhere with no associations to the past, where they could truly begin again. The Cambridge Victorian, with its built-in bookshelves, window seats, and quirky architectural details, had felt right the moment they walked in. Emma had claimed a turret room with a circular window overlooking a Japanese maple tree. Tyler had chosen a smaller room next door, though in those first weeks he often ended up in Emma's room, seeking the comfort of her presence when nightmares struck. The legal battle had been exactly as difficult as Mike had predicted. Catherine had hired an aggressive attorney who portrayed her as a loving mother, victimized by a vindictive husband and a manipulative stepdaughter. She had wept convincingly in court, describing her sincere efforts to blend their family and her confusion and heartbreak at the allegations against her. But the evidence had been overwhelming. Emma's diary, meticulously documenting incidents with dates and details, Mrs. Wilson's testimony about the systematic mistreatment she had witnessed, Tyler's reluctant but clear descriptions of his mother's different behavior when Robert wasn't present, and most damning of all, the analysis of the mysterious pills, which turned out to be a powerful antihistamine known to cause drowsiness, not dangerous in itself, but disturbing in the context of being secretly administered to make Emma more compliant. The school principals and Emma's teacher had provided additional testimony about the changes they'd observed in Emma's behavior and appearance. The teacher described how Emma had become increasingly withdrawn, how her once neat homework had become smudged with what appeared to be tears, and how she had begun to apologize constantly for existing, a phrase that had brought Robert to tears when he heard it in court. Through it all, Catherine had maintained her composure, adjusting her strategy as the evidence mounted. When denial became untenable, she shifted to minimization, describing her actions as perhaps overly strict discipline from a concerned stepmother. When that failed, she claimed to be suffering from undiagnosed depression and anxiety that had affected her judgment. The court had not been persuaded. Robert had been granted full custody of Emma, with Catherine prohibited from contact. The situation with Tyler had been more complex, but Catherine's documented abuse of one child in the household had been deemed sufficient to grant Robert temporary custody, while Catherine underwent psychological evaluation and parenting classes. Currently, Catherine was permitted supervised visitation with Tyler once a week, sessions that the boy approached with visible anxiety despite the presence of a court-appointed supervisor. Robert had promised Tyler that he would never have to live with his mother again unless he chose to do so when he was older and could decide for himself. More dinosaurs. Tyler's excited voice pulled Robert back to the present. The boy was holding up a green Lego piece, his face alight with creativity. "We need a T-Rex guarding the castle." "But dinosaurs and castles aren't from the same time period," Emma pointed out, though she was already helping him construct the anachronistic edition. "It's our world," Tyler insisted. "We can make the rules." The simple statement held more significance than the child could know. In Catherine's rigid regime, rules had been weapons, constantly changing to ensure the children could never fully comply. Now they were learning that boundaries could be consistent, fair, and sometimes even flexible. Robert's phone chimed with a text from Mike. "Judge signed final order this morning. Permanent custody of Tyler, granted with supervised visitation for Kay continuing on current schedule. Congratulations, my friend." Relief washed over Robert. The final piece had fallen into place. Both children were legally protected now, their future secure. He quickly texted back his thanks, adding, "Celebration dinner at our place tonight?" The reply came immediately. "Wouldn't miss it. Lisa's bringing her famous apple pie." Robert slipped the phone back into his pocket, savoring the moment before sharing the news. These small victories deserved to be acknowledged, but they were still navigating the children's complicated feelings about Catherine. Tyler especially struggled with the natural love he felt for his mother and the fear she had instilled in him. The doorbell rang and Mrs. Wilson went to answer it. Robert heard a familiar voice in the hallway and smiled as Sarah Chen, their neighbor from the old house, entered carrying a potted plant. "Housewarming gift. Several months late," she announced, setting the peace lily on the coffee table. The moving truck slowed me down. Sarah had been a crucial witness during the custody hearings, describing how she had observed Emma performing excessive chores through the kitchen window and noted the child's increasing exhaustion. After the proceedings, she had maintained contact, becoming a friend and supporter during the transition. "Miss Sarah," Emma exclaimed, abandoning the Lego project to hug the woman. "Did you really move near us?" "3 blocks away," Sarah confirmed. "My lease was up, and Cambridge has better coffee. Shops." She winked at Robert over Emma's head. They both knew her move had been partly motivated by a desire to remain a stable presence in the children's lives. Tyler approached more cautiously, still somewhat shy around adults other than Robert and Mrs. Wilson. "Did you bring Cookie?" he asked, referring to Sarah's golden retriever. "He's waiting in the car," Sarah replied. "I wasn't sure if he was allowed inside yet." "Are you kidding?" Robert laughed. "These two have been campaigning for a dog since we moved in. Kirky would be welcomed like royalty." Sarah grinned. "I'll get him. Fair warning, he's had a bath, but he still might shake." As Sarah went to retrieve her dog, Robert knelt beside the children. "I have some news," he said gently. "The judge made his final decision today. Tyler, you're going to stay living with us permanently, just like we talked about." Tyler's eyes widened. "Forever? Even when I'm big?" "Until you're grown up and ready to live on your own," Robert confirmed. "You'll still see your mum once a week with Ms. Diane present, just like now." Tyler absorbed this information silently, his expression conflicted. "Is Mum really mad?" "Your mom has a lot of feelings right now," Robert said carefully. "But what matters is that you're safe, and Emma's safe, and we're going to be okay." Emma put her arm around Tyler's shoulders. "We stick together, remember? That's the most important rule." Tyler nodded, leaning into her embrace. The bond between the children had only strengthened through the ordeal. Emma protective of her younger brother. Tyler looking to Emma for cues on how to navigate their new reality. The front door opened again, and Cookie bounded in, a blur of golden fur and enthusiastic energy. The children's concerns temporarily forgotten, they dissolved into giggles as the friendly dog covered them with kisses. "He remembers us." Emma laughed as Cookie rolled onto his back for belly rubs. Sarah rejoined Robert and Mrs. Wilson, watching the joyful scene. "How are they really doing?" she asked quietly. "Better every day," Robert replied. "Emma's starting to trust that she's allowed to be a child again. Tyler's learning that love doesn't have to hurt. And you?" Sarah's perceptive gaze met his. Robert considered the question. "I'm learning too, to trust my instincts, to listen more carefully, to put the children first always." "You're doing a remarkable job," Mrs. Wilson assured him. "Both children are flourishing." The afternoon unfolded gently, Sarah staying for lunch, Cookie becoming the central focus of the children's attention, and a general sense of normalcy prevailing that had once seemed impossible. Robert found himself laughing more easily, the weight of the custody battle finally lifting from his shoulders. As Sarah prepared to leave, promising to return soon with Cookie for proper playdates, she pulled Robert aside. "Catherine was at the coffee shop near my new place yesterday," she said in a low voice. "She asked a lot of questions about you and the children." Robert tensed. "What kind of questions?" Nothing directly threatening," Sarah assured him. "But she was fishing for information. Your new address, the children's schools, your routine. I didn't tell her anything, of course." "Thank you," Robert said, making a mental note to alert Mike and review their security measures. Catherine had been relatively quiet since the final custody hearings began, but he never forgot her parting threat at the hotel. "You can't protect them forever." After Sarah left, Robert suggested an outing to the children's favorite ice cream parlor to celebrate the good news. As they walked the few blocks through their Cambridge neighborhood, he noticed how differently the children moved now, Emma skipping ahead occasionally, Tyler reaching for Robert's hand without hesitation. "Can we get chocolate chip cookie dough?" Tyler asked, his voice excited rather than tentative. "Any flavor you want," Robert promised. "It's a special day." At the ice cream shop, they claimed a booth by the window. Emma, carefully counting her allowance money, insisted on buying her own scoop, a small act of independence that would have been unthinkable under Catherine's control. As they enjoyed their treats, Robert's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. Excusing himself, he stepped outside to answer. "Mr. Sullivan?" A woman's voice he didn't recognize. "This is Diane Morales, Tyler's visitation supervisor." Robert's stomach tightened. "Is everything all right?" "Mrs. Sullivan didn't show up for today's scheduled visit," the supervisor explained. "I've tried calling, but there's no answer. Given the circumstances, I thought you should know." "Thank you for letting me know," Robert said, his mind racing. "If you hear from her, please contact me immediately." After hanging up, Robert called Mike, quickly explaining the situation. "It could be nothing," Mike cautioned. "She might be making a point, expressing her displeasure at the final custody ruling. Or she could be planning something," Robert countered. "Sarah said Catherine was asking questions about our new address, the kids' schools. I'll have a word with the security firm," Mike promised, "and maybe alert the schools just as a precaution. But try not to worry too much. Catherine knows she's under scrutiny. Any misstep could cost her even the limited visitation she has now." Robert returned to the booth, maintaining a calm exterior for the children's sake. But as they walked home, he found himself scanning the streets more vigilantly, holding Tyler's hand a little tighter. At home, they found Mrs. Wilson preparing for the evening celebration dinner. Mike and Lisa would be arriving soon, along with their children, a festive gathering to mark this new chapter in their lives. While the children resumed their Lego project, Robert helped Mrs. Wilson in the kitchen, his movements automatic, as his mind continued to process Catherine's missed visitation. Was it a simple power play or something more concerning? "You're worried," Mrs. Wilson observed, her perception as keen as ever. "Catherine missed her visitation with Tyler today," Robert explained in a low voice. "No call, no explanation." Mrs. Wilson's expression grew serious. "That's not like her. For all her faults, she's always very strategic." "Exactly," Robert agreed. "It feels off." The doorbell interrupted their conversation. Robert tensed momentarily before remembering that Mike and Lisa weren't due for another hour. He checked the security camera feed on his phone, a precaution he'd installed at the new house, and was surprised to see a police officer standing on his porch. "Stay with the children," he told Mrs. Wilson, moving to answer the door. The officer, a woman in her 40s with a compassionate expression, introduced herself as Detective Rivera from the Boston Police Department. "May I come in, Mr. Sullivan? I have some information regarding Catherine Winters Sullivan." Robert led her to his study, away from the children's curious ears. "Has something happened?" "Mrs. Winters Sullivan was involved in a single vehicle accident early this morning," Detective Rivera explained. "Her car went off the road near Portsmouth, New Hampshire. She's in stable condition at Portsmouth Regional Hospital." Relief that Catherine wasn't actively threatening the children was quickly replaced by confusion. "New Hampshire. What was she doing there?" The detective's expression became more guarded. "That's actually why I'm here, Mr. Sullivan. When emergency services responded to the accident, they found some concerning items in Mrs. Winters Sullivan's vehicle, specifically detailed maps with your address circled. Photos of your children taken from a distance, and what appeared to be a crude plan for removing Tyler from his school. Robert felt the blood drain from his face. She was planning to take him. It appears that way, the detective confirmed. There was also a passport for Tyler, and packed luggage in the trunk. We believe she may have been intending to leave the country with him. The implications were staggering. Catherine had been planning to abduct Tyler, to violate the custody order, and potentially disappear with him. If not for the accident. I've already spoken with the district attorney, Detective Rivera continued. Given the evidence and the existing custody case, they'll be pursuing charges for attempted parental kidnapping. Mrs. Winters Sullivan will be transferred to Boston Police custody once she's medically cleared. Robert sat heavily in his desk chair, the full weight of what might have happened settling over him. The children, they can't know about this, especially Tyler. He's already so confused about his mother. I understand, the detective assured him, but you should know that this changes things legally. The evidence of a planned abduction will almost certainly result in all visitation rights being terminated. After the detective left, Robert remained in his study, processing the narrow escape. Catherine had been planning one final act of control, to take Tyler and disappear, causing maximum pain to both children and ensuring Robert could never fully heal from the loss. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. Emma stood there, her expression concerned. "Daddy, is everything okay?" "Mrs. Wilson said we have a police visitor." Robert managed a reassuring smile. "Everything's fine, Em. The officer just needed some information for some paperwork about our new address." Emma studied his face, clearly not entirely convinced. "Is it about Catherine?" "Tyler's worried. Catherine had a small accident in her car," Robert said, deciding that a version of the truth was necessary. "She's okay, but she's in the hospital for a little while." "Oh." Emma processed this information. "Does that mean Tyler doesn't have to go for his visit this week?" That's right. And probably not for quite a while after that." A complicated series of emotions crossed Emma's face. Relief, concern, and a maturity beyond her years. "Should I tell him, or will you?" "Let's tell him together," Robert suggested. He might have questions. They found Tyler in the kitchen with Mrs. Wilson, carefully arranging cookies on a plate for the evening's guests. When they gently explained that his mother had been in an accident but was recovering, the boy's reaction was revealing. "So I don't have to see her tomorrow?" he asked, his voice small. "No, buddy. Not tomorrow, and probably not for a long time," Robert confirmed. Tyler nodded, returning to his cookie arrangement. After a moment he asked quietly, "Is it bad that I feel happy?" Robert knelt beside him. "Feelings are never bad, Tyler, they just are. It's okay to feel relieved. And it's also okay if you feel sad or worried too." "I feel both," Tyler admitted. "Is that weird?" "Not weird at all," Emma assured him, with the wisdom of a child who had navigated her own complex emotions. "Feelings are messy sometimes." The doorbell rang again, this time announcing Mike, Lisa, and their children, arms laden with food and small gifts. As the house filled with genuine warmth and laughter, Robert pulled Mike aside to share Detective Rivera's information. "My God," Mike breathed. "If she hadn't gone off the road—" "I know," Robert said grimly. "We were lucky." "Not luck," Mike corrected. "Vigilance. The schools were alerted. Security measures were in place. Even if she had attempted it, she wouldn't have succeeded." The evening progressed with a celebration that felt all the more precious for the danger they had narrowly avoided. The children played board games, the adults shared quiet conversations, and a sense of family, real family, built on love rather than appearance, permeated the home. Later, as Robert tucked the children into their respective beds, a new routine they had established, with Tyler now confident enough to sleep in his own room most nights, Emma asked a question that caught him off guard. "Daddy, are we going to be okay now?" "Really okay?" Robert sat on the edge of her bed, considering his answer carefully. "We are, Em. It might not always be easy and there might be hard days ahead, but we have each other. And we have people who love us and want to help. That's what makes us okay." Emma nodded, satisfied with his answer. "I was scared for a long time," she admitted. "Even before Catherine. After Mom left, I was scared you might leave too." "I'm not going anywhere," Robert promised, brushing her hair back from her forehead. "And neither are you or Tyler." "I know that now," Emma said softly. Good night, Daddy. In Tyler's room, the boy was already half asleep, clutching the stuffed dinosaur that had become his comfort object in recent months. Robert? He murmured drowsily. Yes, buddy? Can I call you Dad someday? Not yet, but maybe soon. The simple question brought tears to Robert's eyes. Whenever you're ready, Tyler, there's no rush. Tyler nodded, his eyes drifting closed. I think I'll be ready soon. Downstairs, the last of the guests were preparing to leave. Mrs. Wilson, who now lived in the apartment over the garage rather than commuting, was tidying the kitchen despite Robert's insistence that it could wait until morning. Some habits die hard, Mr. Sullivan, she chuckled. Besides, it's good for the soul to wake up to a clean kitchen. As Robert walked Mike and Lisa to the door, the spring night was cool and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. A sense of peace settled over him, not the artificial calm that had pervaded his previous home, but something genuine and hard-won. You did it, Robert, Lisa said, hugging him goodbye. You protected those children when it mattered most. We did it, Robert corrected. I couldn't have gotten through this without all of you. After they left, Robert stood on the porch for a moment, looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there he liked to think Jennifer was watching, perhaps finally at peace knowing that their daughter was safe and loved. The road ahead wouldn't be perfectly smooth. There would be custody hearings to formalize the new arrangement in light of Catherine's actions. Both children would continue their therapy, working through the trauma of the past year. And Robert himself was still learning how to be the father both children needed, present, attentive and unwavering in his love. But for the first time in longer than he could remember,